I want to talk about a learning strategy and what you do at that beginning early stages. When I do a learning strategy, there's three things that I always look at. And if you can picture a Venn diagram, three circles, the first one is the audience, understanding who that employee group or employee groups are. The second is the outcomes that you're looking for, which with the learning strategy is going to tie in directly to the business objectives or the business direction. And then the third circle is the environment. What's going on in the environment that will influence what type of learning strategy you should be implementing in your organization. So that's how it looks. If I think about what my process is, I always start with an upfront needs assessment. And when I'm looking at gathering all that information, there's a couple of different approaches that I take, and I thought I'd share them with you. First of all, there's usually a big dump of the client sending me a whole bunch of documents to review. So, mission, vision, values, strategic plans, information on how they currently approach training, information on an intranet site and how that's structured, or a learning management system if they have it, and other initiatives that are going on. So there's a whole bunch of documents to go through at the beginning. The other thing I do is I want to reach out to different groups of employees and hear their perspectives. And to do that, I have kind of three main tools or approaches that I take: interviews, focus groups, and surveys. So with interviews, I typically like to do those early on because it helps me get into that client space and really understand their environment and their culture. I also typically do one-on-one interviews with more senior leaders. Their time is more precious and I think more likely to respond to an interview as opposed to a survey or something like that. So I like to start with interviews. I like to start with kind of senior members in the organization. Secondly, I consider focus groups. I don't always do them, but I sometimes do. And what I'm looking for there is kind of specialty groups. So if there's a big group of employees that are more homogeneous, but then there's a little group over here, I want to make sure that I can get their perspective, and maybe doing an interview with them or doing a focus group to pull in their perspective might help. So the other thing with focus groups is it's a nice way of getting at maybe some mid-level managers or people within the organization. And then finally, surveys. And many of my clients have been sharing with me that their employees have survey fatigue. So I try and be really selective about how long the survey is and who it's going to and what I'm asking. So it's really targeted if at all possible. And there, what that allows me to do is reach a broad group of employees. Now, of course, we can send it to a broad group and we only expect to get a certain percentage back, but it allows to get perspective from a broad group. Then, of course, you can mix and match that. So the focus group and the interviews often help shape what the survey questions are going to be. You could do a survey first, get some data, and then hold focus groups afterwards to be able to dive in and elaborate on the themes that came out in the survey and to get kind of a paint the picture and bring it to life. So certainly you can mix and match. And then the last way that I collect information in the needs assessment phase is through direct observation. And with COVID, that hasn't been happening a whole lot. And admittedly, I find that it's something more that comes out when I'm looking at a needs assessment at an individual course level, and I want to observe the employee kind of doing their job or doing their tasks. So I find with the learning strategy, which is more broad in nature, direct observation doesn't come out as often as an approach that I take. At any rate, I wanted to share with you certainly the three things that I look at when I do a learning strategy: the audience, the outcomes, and the environment. And that my first step is the needs assessment and the different tools in my toolbox that I have available to complete that. Hope that helps.